Hello, this is Eric Buffington, author of the Stones of Power trilogy, and in this lesson about characters, I'm going to talk about flat characters. Sometimes flat characters are secondary characters or supporting cast characters, and I'm going to do this lesson today for my friends at Learning Bird. Let's take a look at flat characters, what they are. We'll give a bit of an overview, and then we'll explore each of these elements a little bit more in depth in just a little bit. First off, flat characters are characters who do not change. They don't change from the beginning of the book or story to the end. They're relatively uncomplicated, these characters, and they're the opposite of round or complex characters. We're going to talk about each of these elements a little bit more in depth now. Flat characters do not change. From the beginning to the end, there's no growth. One of the definitions of a main character is that they do have some kind of growth, or they accomplish some kind of task throughout the course of the story or the book or the movie or the short story. Flat characters don't have that. They don't grow, they don't change, they don't progress throughout the book. They're pretty much the same. And because of this, or as a reflection of this, we often don't know much about the character. So if you have only a physical description of a character, you don't know very much else, and then they don't appear very often, that's probably a flat character. They're not complicated. Real people are complicated. You know this if you've ever spoken to a human being. They like one thing, they don't like another thing. Every person has their own opinions, and sometimes they work together and sometimes they don't. So complicated people are real people. Flat characters are not complicated. Well-constructed main characters should be complicated. I'll say that again. Well-constructed main characters should be complicated. They should have depth. But secondary characters or very poorly constructed main characters are not complicated. If by the end of the book you only know a little bit about the character, it shouldn't be the main character. If you're an author, you should definitely make your main characters well-rounded. Secondary characters can be flat characters, and we'll talk about reasons for that later on. But flat characters typically are not complicated and hopefully are not main characters. The opposite of round or complex characters. So flat characters are the opposite of round characters. You can kind of see this imagery almost of like a round character and a flat character, a complex character and a flat character. Real people have likes, dislikes, and personality. We talked about that already. That's part of them being complicated. Flat characters just don't. They don't have this. Possibly because you don't know about all of these levels inside of a character, but flat characters, you just don't have all of these things. We don't know about them. So let's talk about why I would make a flat character if I was an author. If I'm an author and I want to make a flat character, why on earth would you want to do that? Well, every person has a story, but we don't have time to know every person's story. So inside of a book or a writing, you might not have time, and so you need to have some characters that are not totally fleshed out. So we focus on the main character. We need secondary characters and we need plot characters to move things along and to help interact with the main character, but we don't need them to have all of the depth that a main character would. So a flat character or a secondary character will help the plot move along, but they don't have to move along with the plot. They don't have to change as the plot changes. Here's some examples of when it would be okay to be a flat character, briefly. Maybe a soldier in a large army. Alright? If you're writing a book about a big battle scene, you don't have to tell the story of every soldier that's in there. And it would actually be bad to do that. So having a soldier in a large army might not be a deep character. We might not know about that character. We might not see change in that character, and that's okay. Perhaps a sibling of a main character, maybe a younger brother or something. And the main character is like constantly like, what are you doing? Stay out of my room. And you know about the main character and what's happening, but the sibling is just kind of a flat character, kind of a off to the side, secondary, minor character. That would be a flat character. A teacher or principal in a school. Oftentimes we see school as being a setting for some stories. And you see the teacher who's nice, or the teacher who yells, or the principal who wears a suit and doesn't really interact with the students, whatever. Those characters don't need to have depth. We don't need to know an awful lot about the teachers or the principal in the school of the main character. Those would be flat characters. The one time it's not okay to have a flat character is if it is your main character. Cannot be flat. We've talked about that before. Your main character needs to be well-rounded and complex and deep, not flat. Deep, not flat. So as just a recap of flat characters, they're characters who don't change, they're relatively uncomplicated, and they are the opposite of our well-rounded main characters. Hope that lesson's been helpful for you. Have a great day.